Happy Daylight Savings Day, people. Don't forget to set your clocks forward an hour. This is another dynamic trio, in this case, for our double feature that we got going on today. We are talking about Scream 6, and by default, the Scream franchise as a whole. We're also going to be talking a little bit, not as much as we did a couple weeks ago, but a little bit about the second half of You, Season 4, before we give our Oscar predictions as to what we think is going to win tonight at the big night. It is our Super Bowl. The 95th Academy Awards are on tonight. I am joined by Kristen, aka Miss Flamingo, and Dustin, the Duster Mason. This is already going to be a powerhouse trio. So without further ado, let's just roll this intro and get into it. This is the Scream 6 Double Feature Podcast. You know, guys, it's been a long-standing tradition of the Talkin TV podcast that every time we start this, I always bring in like a little facet of our real life in before we actually like go into whatever movie topic we're talking about. So naturally, you guys can, for whatever reason, my dumbass completely forgot that daylight savings happens the morning of when you first wake up. So naturally, you can imagine my confusion when I woke up, fully expecting to like, you know, not have to get ready for like another hour. And then I saw that it was already 10 o'clock. And I'm like, wait, my clock is saying 9, my phone is saying 10. I'm like, ah, crap, I fell for it again. This happens at least like once every year. It was bound to happen eventually. So technically, I feel like still people are still adjusting to the time shift. I think that it's some say people can still say that it is 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but for now, we're going live at noon. We're talking about Scream 6. I got Kristen and Dustin on. And guys, this is a franchise that I think is like very, very big and special to both of you specifically. I'll admit this is a little bit of a new one for me. Up until this past 2 weeks, I had only seen the first Scream movie. I had not seen any other Scream movie. So I wanted to start with Kristen first. Kristen, what does the Scream franchise mean to you? What separates it from other horror franchises? And what is it that you think keeps people coming back to it over and over and over again?
Well, my first exposure to the Scream series was like pretty much when I got into middle school. I feel like the time is when middle school, a lot of people start to get into like horror films because there's like those PG-13 horror movies that are easy, accessible to anybody. But with Scream, they used to play it all the time on MTV on Halloween. And I used to watch that like during the time of like middle school. And it was like so elevated. It kept me intrigued. And the best part is about the Scream film is that it's like a mystery all the way through. Because you always get surprised. You're always fascinated why the killer is doing the actual killing. It's a unique experience every time. And every time I go back, I always find myself enjoying it more and more and more. And, for someone like you, Dom, who hasn't, new to the series, it's exciting for me when you get to know how the kills are. And you're like, I know we were talking during the week and you were telling me what your thoughts were. And I was just like, oh my gosh, did you find about this killer? Did you get this one? What was the best kill? Like, it's all like very exciting to me. And it's unlike a lot of like, horror, mystery, thriller type things. It's unique in its own way. It's got comedy. It's got elevated moments. It's really unique in its own way. So I love the Scream films.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is that unlike a lot of these other legacy horror franchises, which aired a majority of their entries before we really came around, and as a result, now as we're older, they're airing like kind of their reboot phase. Scream, what's interesting about that is Scream has always kind of been a part of our lives because you had the first 3, which had already been around, because for the longest time, Scream was just a trilogy, and then you had 4, which came around. Like you're a little bit older than us, so I believe Dustin and I were like either an 8th grade or a freshman in high school when the 4th one came out. So you would have been
I was a freshman in high school.
So you would have been like a freshman in high school when that came out, right? And now we've
grade.
8th grade for us. So then, so we've only recently gotten 5 and 6. But so it's weird how Scream has kind of always been like, in a weird way, way more present and more conscientious of the time frame that I feel like a lot of these other legacy horror franchises that we have. Dustin, what's your first time watching Scream and like how you got into the franchise?
I saw it on TV one day when I was like 13, 14, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is fucking great.
Same thing.
Because like I did dress up as Ghostface for Halloween one year just because I thought it was cool, but I never saw the movie yet. But it was the one. Do you remember the one where you could have like the button and like the blood gushes? Through
Oh
the- Yeah, that's the one I had, and I was as soon as I saw that first one, I was like, wait a minute, maybe I shouldn't write off horror movies because this is actually tense and unpredictable and actually hilarious, like deliberately. So even at a young age, like I thought like these movies are like then I saw the second one and then the third one, and we can get into that. But then the fourth one came out and I was like, yeah, this is like these are still cool. Like and to me, like without spoiling too much of, what I think about these last two movies, this is my favorite horror franchise. It's easily the most consistent. It's like even with that shitty third one, it's the most consistent, franchise, and it's creative. And even though you're going to probably argue, Dominic, that every movie is the same, I mean, what horror franchise doesn't repeat itself ad nauseum? But compared to every other horror franchise, it's original every time.
Right.
Every single time. And like she was saying, like the kills are pretty much elevated in every movie, and they get, cringier and weirder and like more gruesome every time, and I enjoy it. And I really like this new cast of characters, which I do think is an improvement over the fourth film, which introduces a bunch of new characters and just kills them off, except for two characters. But then they killed Marley Shelton off in the last movie, so then they bring back Kirby in this one. But otherwise I think that fourth movie does a very successful job at what it's trying to do. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the franchise. I think it's it's the freshest franchise you're going to get out of horror. I don't know what other franchise really compares to this in terms of quality and originality and dialogue that's really sharp more times than it isn't.
Yeah.
And can I just chime in and say it's probably, since we're living in this day and age where we're getting the reboots and everything, it's so much better than like the Halloween ones.
Final Destination.
Texas
I'll give it
Chainsaw.
credit over the Halloween.
Way better than Texas Chainsaw.
Do we even still acknowledge that as like a movie? I'm pretty sure everyone wrote that off as like just a joke. Like I don't think anybody was taking that movie seriously. The Texas Chainsaw reboot.
Oh, the reboot? Oh, yeah, that was awful.
The new one and the recent one on Netflix.
No, absolutely not.
Anything that was touched recently.
The Netflix one was just horrendous.
I saw the fucking scene where the guy's trying to take a video of Leatherface saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you canceled." And I'm like, no, like I'm not watching this. I have no reason to watch this.
You can have cringy dialogue and horror. That one just is a whole level
I don't even know if that. I think calling that line dialogue is being generous.
And the school shooting shit. They just throw a school shooting subplot in the middle of it, and then you see a flashback of goofy Elsie Fisher on the floor, like, all right, awful movie.
Yeah, the less said about the Texas Chainsaw reboot's the better. Yeah, my thing is, it's like, look, I'm not gonna say that I'm not a horror fan. It's the problem is that I'll admit, for me, I didn't really get into horror until like the elevated horror phase of the last couple of years. So for me, it's like a lot of these older horror franchises came off as like schlocky and gimmicky compared to like movies like Get Out, like Hereditary, like all the other incredible, like the Babadook, like the Conjuring movies, like all these incredible like wave of horror movies that we've gotten in the last couple of decades. So for me, kind of trying to do my homework as a good film student and a good podcaster and a good lover of film and trying to, understand the history of horror, just a lot of it just has not worked for me. The ones that I really gravitated toward, I like all the zombie movies because zombie movies, even though zombies kind of become its own genre now, it still had its roots in horror, and I'm a big fan of the original Exorcist. But when it came to slashers, there was always just something, and I'm attributing this to the fact that the first ever slasher movie that I watched, even though this really doesn't qualify as that, is Scary Movie, which like parodies all of them to the point where it's like you can't even take any of them seriously. I feel like that kind of ruined my ability to take slashers seriously for a long time, especially going back and watching Scream and see how closely tied together Scream and Scary Movie are. I remember the first time I watched Scream, I'm like, what is this? Like, what am I supposed to get from this? Like, Scary Movie was already like the spoof of this. I'm like, is this a spoof? Is this a slasher? Because I didn't understand what to make of it, where I'm like, am I supposed to be laughing at this, or am I supposed to be like genuinely like feeling like disgusted at this and like feeling horrified, And so I wasn't sure what to make of it. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't until I listened to the Scream Rewatchables podcast and broke down like exactly like the writer Kevin Williamson and the story behind that, and like how he envisioned like what he was kind of envisioning for these characters, and how like he pitched it to Wes Craven, and how this was like a second lease on life for Wes Craven, whose movie before the first Scream movie was Vampire in Brooklyn, which was almost like career suicide for him when that movie came out. So my whole stance is that, like, so I'll admit, so I rewatched Scream a couple of years ago. I'll admit I was with the girls, so that definitely helped. But I rewatched Scream a couple of years ago, and and when I rewatched it, that's when I'm like, oh, now I get it. They're basically doing it where I'm like, okay, the fact that it was a novelty act when it came out, the fact that it was the first horror movie that was ever visibly aware of the tropes and actually had characters in the movie speaking out the tropes verbally. So as a result, you could almost have this, like, what's it called? You could almost have like this fun, like back and forth, tongue-in-cheek dialogue with the audience, where the audience is now being made aware of these tropes as like the kills are happening, and the fact that it all kind of builds into this interesting murder mystery, and almost I think the cool thing about the first one is that all the meta discussions about the movies are almost used as like a distraction, as a red herring, because ultimately what comes of that is that once Billy and Stu are revealed as the killers, I don't think that's a spoiler. Like they've said it multiple times. If you see this movie, you know that Billy and Stu are the killers in the first one. Exactly. Once the killers are revealed, it's revealed that, like, oh, the meta stuff was just a distraction. And what I will give this franchise credit for is how each movie uses its different placement within the franchise and the different meta textual stuff that's associated with that as a content distraction, because 9 times out of 10, with the exception of a few, the meta horror franchise killer stuff has little to do with the killer's actual motivations. They use that in order to, like, usually as distractions, but usually it has nothing to do with the actual killer's motivation, which is what I will say allows each franchise to continue to remain fresh as these murder mysteries abound. Where my problems come from is the fact that I ultimately just am unable to kind of divorce myself from that, because every time I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to enjoy this as a movie, but you have all these characters babbling all this meta shit, and then they keep falling for the same tropes. It's like the Moana Shrek thing, you know, where it's like you can't just say the tropes verbally out loud and then continue to do them, you know? Like there's a little bit of a dissonance for me, you know? It's like, it's almost like if I constantly bring this back to Deadpool, because Deadpool, I feel like, was the first instance where I saw this in theaters, and I hate to keep bringing it back to superheroes, but I realize the more and more that I podcast and do this, I realize that unfortunately a majority of my understanding and enjoyment of films comes from superhero stuff, is the fact that it's like, that would be like if Deadpool was saying all of the tropes that he was that like are associated with them, and then just doing them instead of just like relentlessly mocking them and making fun of them and then going out of his way to shoot. That would be like if Deadpool didn't shoot Francis at the end of the first movie after Colossus gives him the whole speech. That would be like Deadpool was actually moved by the speech at the end. That would completely defeat the entire purpose of that. And that's, I feel like, what we're getting with these movies every time, where every single time it's like, okay, here comes Gale Weathers. She's going to do she's going to reveal to be only after the money. And here comes Dewey, and he's ultimately going to be dumb, you know? And here comes Sydney, and the killer, and at least for the first 4, the killer's always somehow going to be related family-wise to Sydney, you know? And it's like, it's that sort of a thing. I was talking to Dustin about this the other day. I watched 3 and 4 back-to-back early this week. I watched 3 on Sunday night, and I watched 4 on Monday night. And I swear to God, I felt like it was in a feedback loop, where I'm like, the formulas are just so obvious and so similar that I'm like, it kind of, we'll get into like more than 80 gritties aside, but it's like, that's the thing that I feel like is constantly holding me back from enjoying these movies. So while I give credit where credit is due, ultimately I cannot say that after watching these movies that I am a fan of the Scream movies. Dustin, I can tell you you're ready to explode here. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that we've already kind of had this discussion.
It's just funny to me that you're like, I don't think it does that all the time. Like, yeah, it calls out meta shit, but I don't think it does like exactly what you're saying. Some movies do, and this one kind of does, but I don't think all of them do. You know, and your favorite show is Community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, that show isn't like crystal perfect with every single meta. Sometimes it gets a little on the nose. Like, shit that's meta is going to get on the nose. You know what I mean? And like Scream, I feel like is allowed to do that because it's one of the first meta things ever, I would say.
Yeah,
like that's pretty safe to say. Like that, it's like it should get away with some things since it's one of the ones that originated the whole meta subgenre of anything, not even just horror.
Right.
Just the fact that you could do meta.
I guess just in the sense of where it's like we as a result of these movies trying to be so self-aware, we want the characters to be as self-aware as humanly possible. And I guess the difference between this and something like a more straight-up comedy, like a Community, like Tropic Thunder, is the fact that the thing that I like about Community is that the characters, that because they're aware of the tropes, they're able to somehow avoid them. And so, like, I guess my problem with the Scream movies always comes from, I'm like, okay, if these guys are supposed to be suspicious of killers being around the corner anywhere, right? That the killers could literally come from anywhere at any time, then how the hell are they still caught off guard and surprised by them every single time? Like every single time, like clockwork. I think the only time that these movies didn't fall for that was in the one that came out last year, Scream 5, but it did the stupid Halloween thing where it just called itself Scream again, which I hate when they do that, especially since this is supposed to be the one franchise that like is conscientious of that. So like I understand it from a reboot purpose, but like just call it Scream 5. That just annoyed me.
I feel like most people call it Scream 5.
Everybody calls it Scream 5.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I just want to just put in everyone's mind again. Look at the poster for Scream 2022 again. Look at the M. The M is very pronounced, and you could fashion a V. You could see the V in it. So like, I feel like they were very self-aware about that, and they acknowledge it through dialogue why they called it Scream, because like of the whole like Stab 8 thing in the movie. They're like, just call it Stab 8. We're all gonna call it Stab. Like, it's clever that way, and I felt like this movie, without spoiling my thoughts for 6, it's a lot more clever than 6.
Yeah. So in order to kind of wrap up the discussion on the franchise itself, I think the only time that I think that the characters didn't fall for the same stupid like we're walking into a dark corner or whatever is in 5 when Mikey Madison goes downstairs to get the beer and she closes the fridge and Jasmine Savoy Brown is standing right there and is like, you just broke the one rule of going off on your own. And then Jasmine Savoy Brown is doing exactly what Jamie Kennedy did, watching the Stab movie, and is like, turn around, and she's like, oh shit, turns around and Ghostface there. That was the only time where I'm like, yes, thank you. Like that is what I'm talking about. That is what I want these characters to be doing. These characters should be suspicious all the time. Like there was no reason at all why Dylan Minnette should be in a shower by himself, walking out, somehow missing his mom dead on the ground, turning around and being surprised by Ghostface and stabbed in the neck. There's no reason why that should be a thing at all in these movies. Like that to me is constantly what irritates me. It's like, if all of these characters are supposed to be so self-aware and understanding that there is a killer that could literally pop out from anywhere, then why the hell are any of these people still going about their daily lives? They should all literally, exactly like the Community episode, be in the one space, not not going anywhere, and then the killer could still pop in and like pick them off one by one, action style. And Dustin, I also pitched this idea to you as well, I'll also say this now for the viewing audience as well. What I'll give this new movie Scream 6 credit for, and this is kind of how we're going to transition into the discussion about Scream 6, is that Scream 6 almost did this idea where I pitched this idea of, wouldn't it be awesome because every single one of these movies has to end with a dumb twist where the killer unmasks themselves, and it's always one of the group, and it's always supposed to be a surprise. It's always trying to be like somebody who like nobody was expecting at all. And wouldn't it be awesome if we saw the killer kill someone? The person, that's the other thing too. Why does nobody in these freaking movies ever try to reach and unmask the killer? Why does nobody ever try to do that at all? And like the one time that happened, when David Arquette was gonna shoot Ghostface in the last movie in the head, and Ghostface, of course, was wearing a bulletproof vest, which another thing. How does nobody expect Ghostface
Scream 2,
to be Scream 2? She goes back, and then her friend gets killed.
Yep.
Okay. All right. But so my point being is that wouldn't it be awesome if the killer kills someone, pulls off the mask, reveals who they are, then goes back to the friend group and pretends to be a regular person?
Yeah.
That would be something cool, and that would be something different. And they almost did that at the beginning of this movie before they flipped that on its head. So that brings us into our discussion on Scream 6. Scream 6 takes place immediately after the events of Scream 5. You're following the remaining surviving four, the Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, Mason Gooding, and Jasmine Savoy Brown. They've moved to New York. They've gotten away from Woodsboro. Unfortunately, even though they've gotten away from the location, they still can't get away from the killer because there's a new killer that is pursuing them that is, I don't know, trying to do a franchise. I don't know. They were kind of really vague on that. Every one of these movies is always specific about its order.
The thing was, I think they were trying to continue what Richie was trying to do in the previous film.
Well, we'll get into that. Like I said, save that for once because we both
for the third act shit.
Yeah. So like I said,
I really want to like run down these previous movies real quick.
So Dustin, do it.
The first movie is a classic in my opinion, and I think it set up the franchise perfectly. Even though you didn't necessarily need to make this a franchise, but they made it work. And Kevin Williamson had ideas brewing in his head before they started doing the second.
Originally,
movie.
He had envisioned this as a trilogy.
Yes, and then the second one came out, and I think it's a great sequel.
Yeah.
It might not.
It's like one of the top.
I will say I was a big fan of 2 when I watched that.
Yeah, and it might be the best sequel just because of like Peter Deming's cinematography. It's just so immaculately shot, and the tension is great, and they went bigger on the budget and the kills, and the twist is crazy, but it works. And Timothy Olyphant is terrific.
He's outstanding
wonderful.
in that.
Yes.
Even though I would have liked a little bit more, but I get why why certain killers don't get enough screen time in these movies, but I get it. Laurie Metcalf wasn't in it as much, but she was great. I thought she nailed it, and she definitely has a lot of rage as an actress. Scream 3 comes out and it ruins almost the fucking first 2 movies for me because it tries to retroact the setup of the first movie where it's actually Roman who's like involved with the killings in the first movie. He's the one who inspires Billy and Stu, and he has like a voice changer. He can change all of his. It's like so many dumb things in that movie. I hate how like mildly misogynistic the first 3 movies are in regards to Maureen Prescott. Sydney's mom, like she doesn't have one scene of like dialogue at all. She's just dead, and they treat her like a whore every movie.
Remember, she comes back as a ghost hallucination in 3.
Right. That was wild stuff.
And Roman like sounds like her on the voice changer. I'm like, this is fucking science fiction. This is so dumb. I'm your long.
It's not even her. It's like the strangest flip from all the first 2. It's like you watch a different film. It's like
she was actually an actress. She was an actress, and then she got raped, and then moved to Woodsboro. And it's like, what? Why do you think so low in this Maureen character? And she like cheated on the husband in the first movie. It's like, and there's a similar path that they're doing with Sam and Tara's mom that I'm afraid of. And I really am worried for this upcoming 7.
Yeah, for 7 if they make it. Also, fun fact.
There was a rumor they greenlight it. Apparently,
but 4 going to Scream 4, they tried, like I said before, to bring in a new batch of Scream majors. You know what I mean? And for a new audience, for a new generation. And I think that movie works very well, but it kills everybody off. I think it kind of drags in the middle at the Stabathon sequence, but other than that, I think it's a very tightly paced movie with really clever dialogue and underrated opening sequence, which could get a little too meta for some people. Once it locks into the actual story and we get that first opening kill with Britt Robertson and Amy Teagarden from Disney's Prom, very, very good. Very, very good movie. Very good Ghostface. Original Ghostface. Trying to take the supposed new final girl, but making her the killer. And Emma Roberts absolutely kills it in this role. And it's one of her best performances. She's a very underrated actress, too. I think she's just as good as her aunt. That might be a hot take, but I think she's been very consistent over the years. And Hayden Panettiere comes in and steals that whole movie, has one of the best horror monologues I've ever heard of her, just listing all of every horror franchise, I think, in existence at the time.
Yeah.
And I really dug that. And then the 5th one came out, and the 4th one kind of works more as a standalone movie, the way it ends and everything, and how Sydney saves the day and prevents Jill from exacting her plan fully. But the 5th one comes out and it's pretty much like a straight up requel, and which the movie pretty much acknowledges. And I kind of came up with that term a couple of years prior, just by jokingly fucking around with that word, with sequels and reboots and everything, and I combine them. Whatever. This movie takes credit for it, but it works because it's insanely clever. It has one of the best killer reveals ever, and it mirrors the first film in the most cleverest of ways, and it actually tackles toxic fan culture quite cleverly. And just like I said, Jack Quaid and Mikey Madison, when they finally get to reveal themselves, they absolutely slaughter.
Not to mention the fact that they kill Mikey Madison in the exact same way they killed her once upon a time in Hollywood.
That's
you
awesome.
called that, and that was mind blowing to me. I'm like, and they even have her come out at the end with the freaking like holding the gun before she gets shot in the head, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, these guys were really inspired by Tarantino here.
Yeah, and he died like a pussy.
Oh my God, fucking Jack Quaid in that movie. But that leads us into 6. And I will say this about 6.
Yeah.
6 is a lot of fun in terms of the setting, even though I think, Dustin, you and I agree that they didn't utilize New York as well as they probably could have. You could tell they had some very limited settings here, but the set pieces are fun. The mystery aspect of it, the fact that it's the first Scream movie that doesn't take place in Woodsboro or California in any way, shape, or form, It definitely has a lot of fun in terms of like using the setting in order to like further the mystery and everything. Also, the fact that this is the first Scream movie that doesn't feature Sidney Prescott in any way, shape, or form. I think they did a pretty good job of avoiding the fact that, like, you know, she basically said, okay, you're not going to pay me enough for this, so I'm not coming back for this one. I thought they did a pretty good job of tackling that as far as the continuing threads where Gail is still kind of upset over Dewey's death, even though, like, you know, her character has been so consistent in the fact that she's always going to be drawn back to these killings in some way, shape, or form. I thought this movie had a lot of promise, but I think this movie pulled a little bit too much from Scream 3. And again, written by now, fun fact, and 2, but in a little bit more so 3. With fun fact, Scream 3 written by now Oscar-nominated writer Aaron Kruger, whose credits include the Transformers movies. The less said about that, the better. And that unfortunately leads us into probably the dumbest third act twist, I think, since 3.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
Kristen, jump in, because I can tell you've been waiting. So your thoughts on the twist in this movie and the kills.
I really liked the twist. I'm not gonna lie, because I liked the continuation of that character of, like, you know, can I spoil it?
Oh yeah. So we're in spoiler territory. Yeah. So
So I like the fact that they were trying to continue off of what Richie was trying to do. Oh, and I wasn't crazy about the sister being involved with it, but I liked the fact that they like included in like Jack Landon. Is that the guy's name?
Champion.
The actor?
Champion. Avatar
Spider.
2 kid. Avatar 2 kid, as he will forever be known to be.
Okay, I didn't watch Avatar 2, so I don't care. This is the sequel that matters to me. But where's I going with this? Oh yeah. I like Tate. What was that? Why was I gonna say is it? No, not Tate.
Who cares about his character's name?
The dad.
Yeah,
the dad.
Yeah, Dermot Mulroney. Bailey.
Dermot Mulroney.
Yeah.
Was
Dermot Mulroney, Jack Champion, and then their roommate,
Leanna Liberato.
Leanna Liberato are revealed to be the killers, as they are revealed to be
the family.
Yeah, they are revealed to be. They're revealed to be. Again, I think this is the first time where we've ever gotten 3 Scream killers as opposed to 2.
Sure. Yeah.
And they
I liked having the 3.
Concocted this entire thing as revenge for Richie, Jack Quaid's character's death in the last one, and revealed that even though it is one of the strangest confessions I've ever seen where Dermot Mulroney, and of course, this is another problem that I have, is that every single time these stupid killers are revealed, they're always revealed to be like cackling, raving lunatics. I'll give Jack Quaid credit for this. Jack Quaid, you can kind of see where he's coming from, because like the way that he's portrayed, like as like a subtle fan, like you kind of see that coming from. But every single one of these freaking killers, I think Scott Foley is the most guilty of this in 3.
Yeah.
They always turn from like relatively normal people into these fucking psychopaths. And I'm like, okay, not every psychopath on the planet is going to be able to create just such this like perfectly normal facade. That's not how things work, you know? So naturally, and the fact that this one is a cop too, the fact that one of the killers is revealed to be a cop is.
Can I talk?
Please. Yeah.
I don't understand. I thought they were going to do that with Patrick Dempsey in 3, because his performance reads like that, like he's the killer the whole time. But I think that's stupid, and I'm glad they didn't do that in 3, but they did it here. Because the thing I'm not clear about, did he change his name, or did Richie use a fake name? Because I could have sworn in one point of the movie at the 3rd act, Dermot Mulroney was doing his whole monologue, and at one point he's like, "Oh, I had good old Detective Bailey do." And so he like referred to himself in the 3rd person in like a mocking way. So I'm like, did he create a fake fucking like persona and just pretended like to like he infiltrated being a police officer and then like just like did all these crime scenes like and. It just didn't make his plan didn't make sense, especially since the first kill of the movie, Tony Revolori is doing these kills to honor Richie's legacy. And he's like, what about the movie? And then what does Ghostface say? Who gives a fuck about movies? Well, apparently you do, Dermot Mulroney, because you're honoring your son's legacy.
Right.
Because, you know, and he got his 2 kids. One too many kids in this movie. You know what I mean? How many fucking kids are there going to be?
Right.
How many
they were busy.
Kids? Yeah, I know, but like, and I just didn't believe like any of the actors who played the Ghostface killers. I thought those were really misguided performances. Jack Champion was completely miscast, and I'm not convinced he's even an actor. Like, I don't. No. He should be like working at like Jimmy John's or something.
Oh man,
like
not
Jersey
Jimmy John's.
Not Jimmy John's.
Or like he should be working at a Subway.
But I like the fact they casted him because I could see the resemblance for Richie, so I was like, okay, well,
sure, but he can't act, so like, who cares?
Yeah, as opposed to Jack Quaid, who, as much as I'm sick and tired of people shitting on him in The Boys. Jack Quaid's a great actor.
He's great.
Jack Quaid is wonderful.
He's great.
He's awesome.
He hasn't been,
and he's a true film nerd,
anything.
so I give him a lot of credit.
Right.
You can tell in his performance that he's actually like a Scream fan, too.
Right.
Like, you can't tell shit by this performance. He's so bland, and like, he has the, inevitable, like, oh, am I gonna die a virgin? Like, Joe, it's like, shut up.
Really?
Well, to be fair, he did.
I know, but like, that great payoff, I guess. But like, no. The thing that was bothering me with that character too is that they were laying it on way too thick in that one scene with him and Liana Liberato, where they essentially just lay out the conspiracies, and what they essentially say in the third act to them is like, you're a psycho anyway, and you could have just taken control of you could have taken the trauma and like done the killings for yourself. And I'm like, this is retarded. And I thought it was like the most predictable killers in the franchise since maybe the most predictable killers, because I predicted them at that scene, but then earlier I predicted, as soon as the therapist died, I was like, Dermot Mulroney's the killer. As soon as he died, I was like, he's the only one who knew about the therapist.
Right.
The movie specifically went out of its way to like let us know that he's the only one to know that. So as soon as the therapist dies, and I was like, yeah, it has to be Dermot Mulroney.
My theory as to what happened there is that the radio silence guys, Tyler Bettinelli, Open, and Matt Gillette, they again went so far out of their way to again with the last one and honoring and paying homage to the first Scream, and they really, I think, did a good job. 5, I think, is my favorite of the franchise after the first one. That with this one, and they rushed this one into production so fast that they barely had enough time to like really think out the twist. There were seeds of it there. But unfortunately, it was just too rushed, and I don't think they got the right batch of actors. And like I said, the motivations were so half-assed and didn't make sense. I'm like, so break this down for me. I'm like, you mean to tell me then, oh, you thought that your son was a little bit too obsessed with this franchise, but he's like, oh, but a father will always do what he wants for his oldest son. So you construct this entire shrine to like the Scream movies around him, and then deliberately lay trails for it, and then once it like none of this shit makes any sense.
None of it made sense.
This is the most ridiculous of any of these franchises, and again, this is a franchise that has previously included literally people killing people just for like to make like to continue the legacy so that they can make more books and movies about this, and a franchise about like a dude orchestrating these killings just to like get a higher position in Hollywood. Like this is already building off of a series of killings that already have the dumbest motivations to begin with, which again, that's part of the franchise's legacy, is that the killers always do have dumb motivations. It's why, again, it's part of what Kevin Williamson wanted to do originally with the series, to show that like, the best motivation is no motivation, because that was part of his thing of wanting to make these movies feel more real to life and feel more scary as a result.
I just didn't understand any of the plan, because was he unaware that his son was a psychopathic groomer?
Right. Like
was he aware of that?
Right.
He orchestrated that whole thing. Him and Amber orchestrated those whole killings. Is he just unaware of that? The only explanation he gave was like, I saw a picture of what you did to him and I knew you had to die. And I was like, okay, that's stupid. That's really stupid.
And the thing that they're also trying to do is they're trying to also tie this into the fact that it's like, okay, the fact that Melissa Barrera's character is revealed in the last one to be the daughter of Billy Loomis. So they're trying to tie this into the idea of, she's almost like, I'm assuming that again, this is the thing that where they can't deviate. Again, it's similar to what the problems that I had with the Halloween reboot too, is it's like, okay, they want to introduce these new things, but they can't deviate from the original Scream formula, where it's like, again, does Melissa Barrera have this dark passenger that was inherent in her father, where again, she's constantly having these hallucinations about Skeet Ulrich, which again, I'm constantly thrown off every time I see him, because it's like, they're trying to model him to look like his younger self, but he's like 25 years older. So there's that. And it's like, okay, is she going to turn into like this psycho killer? But like, she keeps using this dark passenger in order to like get one up on the killers. So it's like, I feel like they are trying to introduce this interesting synergy of who is the real villain here, but again, they can't escape from the Scream formula is what's holding them back from actually taking this into actually interesting and new directions. And it's constantly the problem that I have, not just with this franchise, but with all these stupid reboots, is because you have these writers that want to introduce these sets of new ideas and introduce these new lifeblood, but they can't get, like Jasmine Savoy Brown is saying, they can't get away from the ideas of the original franchise because God forbid they piss off any of the fans, you know, half of whom don't even end up showing up to see these movies, you know, because they end up waiting for them to come on streaming anyways, you know. I mean, I digress because these are horror movies, you know. I mean, it's like, and you constantly have this push-pull back and forth, you know, and the last one worked because, again, the whole requel thing, and I think that they were actually having some really interesting and different tidbits. But this one, I think really, again, similar to in a way that The Last Jedi did and with Halloween Kills did a few years ago, really shows its ugly head as far as like really struggling between trying to introduce new stuff and being stuck to the formula. Which, Justin, I also wanted to ask, so they've established, so is Jenna Ortega also Billy's daughter, or no, it's just the Melissa Barrera character? Okay,
it's just Melissa Barrera.
Okay, so they're half sisters.
They're like half sisters. They're
okay,
not.
Got it.
That was the thing that
I was a little bit confused by as well. And
they mentioned that in the first film, though.
I was also just confused by like how they wanted to like frame Melissa Barrera, even though they were already doing that the whole movie by being like conspiracy theorists online. Like they had people fucking believing them. You know what I mean? Why do they have to have her be like actually? What was their plan? To kill her and put the Ghostface mask on her and be like, see, she was Ghostface.
Right.
Like, was that literally
also
the plan?
That's again, for him being a cop, he's a pretty fucking stupid cop, because if he's wanting her to put on the mask, I'm assuming he wants her to put her on so that it's her DNA on it. I'm like, motherfucker, you're already holding the goddamn mask. Your DNA is going to be on that shit. Like,
right?
And DNA's everywhere what they were touching and making that whole shrine of like the whole thing, you know?
I don't get how he's a cop. I don't understand how he can be a cop. How he can get all this.
He's a detective, like, too. And he's like elevated himself so quickly, too.
Not even like a street cop either. This is like baseline. This is like, again, one of the highest levels of the NYPD. And also, not to mention the fact that it's like, okay, so the whole idea of it being obvious, I detected from the minute that I watched the first Scream movie. So I don't know if this is a thing of where they're paying homage to it or not, but bear with me here. When I watched the first Scream movie, the minute that Billy Loomis enters, climbing in through the window with that stupid face that he makes, I'm like, okay, he's the killer. Like, look, without even a second hesitation.
Right.
And I'm like, and that was the thing that threw me off when the first time I watched it. I'm like, I don't understand. I'm like, are we supposed to know that he's the killer? Is it supposed to be obvious? And I didn't get until the second time that I watched it that was supposed to be part of the joke. That like, okay, yes, it is supposed to be obvious that he's the killer. With this one, I don't think they were trying to play that up as a joke. It was kind of just like, okay, Dermot Mulroney is the killer. Like the minute that you see him and that stupid like grim face that he's making the whole time, and I'm like, okay, he's the killer. Like not even a question. It's like, who's the killer? So for me, the mystery was just like, okay, who is assisting him? You know? And I'm like, I didn't know if it was going to be 2, if it was going to be 3. I figured out I think strangely enough, even though Champion's performance sucks, I think that they did a pretty good job of like casting aside suspicion from Jack Champion, you know, with the whole econ thing, and then when he's with Jasmine Savoy Brown when she gets stabbed, but then when
that was revealed,
stupid. It's like
that was stupid because it's like, why did you even go out of your way to save her when you acknowledge at the end that you're going to go kill her and Gale anyway?
Exactly.
It didn't make any sense.
I want to throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
The part that really like kind of like bugged me, I know you guys are talking about Jack Champion, the sister.
Yes.
She was stabbed tremendously amount of times with all the fake blood, and then she kills like her partner that's in the bathroom.
Right.
And then and then he's like, oh, I had time to go in and switch the body. I'm like, the police were there on the scene. Like, when did that happen?
That's what I mean. Like, what sense
like,
does
that was
any
the
of this
part
make?
that threw me off. I was like, I'm giving Jack Champion credit, but the sister, I'm not buying.
Covering up the sister's death and how he's like fake crying. That was another giveaway. I was like, that's not real.
That was also a really bad performance of the performance of the movie. And then when it came time, like when it was revealed that it was like 3 killers, it was like and it came out and like once Jack Champion revealed himself, I'm like, okay, so then it has to be the roommate, because I'm like, by process of elimination, there's nobody else that it could be. You know, I'm like, there's literally no one else. Also, can we just talk about Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown for a hot second, and like how Mason Gooding has got some of the greatest plot armor, because Jesus Christ, how many times is this guy going to get stabbed? Like, and how they're kind of positing him as the Dewey character, but he gives a way better performance than David Arquette, which hot take. I don't think David Arquette, with the exception of 5, is good in any of these movies. I think people are attributing it to the fact that they're like, oh, he's playing dumb. No, he's not dumb. He's just giving a really bad performance. And like, there are points where he's talking in the movie in 2 and 3 to Courtney Cox, and I'm just like, is he like reading cue cards like off of her? Like, what the hell is this performance? Like, this is like genuinely a bad performance. Like,
I don't think he's like dumb in those movies. I think he's just goofy. I think he's just supposed to be a little
persona of his character.
He's just supposed to be a little aloof. You know what I mean? But he's not an idiot.
See, there's a little.
He's just a goofy cop. That's like the whole point of it. That's why I feel like that's the way they're doing it.
There's playing a goofy, aloof cop, and then there's playing like if this was a more straight up like a scary movie, like a parody, then okay, I would be excusable. But the fact that it is
scary movie goes harsh on that character.
That's what I mean.
Like they go even worse.
That's what I mean.
They made him literally retarded.
That's what I mean. And so that's what confused me with Scream. I'm like, okay, is this guy supposed to be mentally handicapped? And they never say it. And as a result, I'm like, I can't buy into that performance because I'm like, he's playing it like he's mentally handicapped, at least to me. I'm sorry if that's not the case, but to me, it's like he is playing it like it is mentally handicapped. Like even 5, which I will say was the best performance that he gave in any of those movies. I'm like, okay, so like the brain damage is really settled in on top of like the nerve damage that he's gotten from the amount of times that he's been stabbed. But like, I love Mason Gooding and Jasmine Savoy Brown. I wish those two were the main characters because those two's dynamic are so great. With Jasmine Savoy Brown as the Jamie Kennedy stand-in, I even made this comparison. I'm like, Jasmine Savoy Brown is the Neil Patrick Harris to Jamie Kennedy's Joey, where she is just better in every sense of the way. She's so much more clever. She's so much more self-aware. The one-liners are even more on point. Her goofy moments that she has are even better. The only non-excusable thing, like I said, is the fact that, and she even calls it on that, but again, this still annoys me where it's like, I didn't predict the killer again. It's like, you have no excuse.
Well, here's the thing. I like the fact that it's mostly taken from Jamie Kennedy's character, and then they just sprinkle in with a little bit of Kirby.
Right.
Because Kirby is such a favorite, and she's like in my top 10 like favorite Scream characters.
And I'm also really glad that they followed that chronology as well, where it's like, okay, she got stabbed, yes, but she didn't die on screen, which I thought that was pretty pretty cool as well. Because and Hayden Panettiere, I have famously been on like 4 is my least favorite of these movies. I was a big fan though of her character in that movie. I thought that she was a breath of fresh air in that. Mostly coming down to the fact that it's like for these two trying to like again do this whole thing to recreate the original killings, and the fact that Rory Culkin is fucking dumb enough to fall for Emma Roberts, which in a strange way, if you want to go dive deeper into the lore of Scream, one could theorize that is what Billy was doing when he stabbed Stu too many times. In the end of the first one, is that Billy was trying to eliminate Stu as well and leave him as the only survivor as well. Which again, and another thing is that from a performance standpoint, this might be a hot take. I don't think it is, but Matthew Lillard gives the greatest performance in this entire franchise. There have been a few that have come close. Like I said, Jack Quaid and Mikey Madison, I think, come pretty close. I'm a big fan of Hayden Panettiere and her performance, but nothing that I've seen in this franchise has topped Matthew Lillard and just the weird facial expressions where he just how over the top he gets. Because
I love Jamie Kennedy though. Jamie Kennedy is just perfect to me.
But the thing about Matthew Lillard is that is the only time where you have the killer turn into this cackling, drooling maniac at the end, but it works because he's kind of been given that performance throughout the entire movie. So,
it's consistent,
right? That's what I mean. Is that the first one is the only time where, again, there's nothing that changes about Billy and Stu's personas. Every single other one of these killers, when they're revealed, their personality just switches on a dime. It works better than others, but that's kind of what always throws me off, is the killers are literally giving a performance throughout the whole movie, and there's just some level of disbelievability that I just can't buy into. But the first one, Billy is like that kind of quiet, weird, like he might be a serial killer, like school shooter personality edge, and Matthew Lillard is just this bombastic, over-the-top, ridiculous nut job throughout the entire time, so that when they're revealed to be the killers, you're like, okay, that makes sense, you know? And every single other one of these stupid killers, again, it's like they're maintaining this facade throughout the entire movie, and I'm like, okay, if these guys
can't be as obvious as it was in the first movie, though. Like, that's the thing. That's why they have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's why every one of these movies, it gets worse with you're Ghostface. No, you're Ghostface. This movie, Kirby's Ghostface. What sense would that make if she was Ghostface?
Yeah, if that would be thrown for a whole new loop. Everybody would be so mad.
I don't know. I think there's a way that they can make it work.
They haven't made like an actual victim survivor like Ghostface yet, and I don't think they should either. Like that's
I feel like though, because given how they have to elevate themselves, that I feel like at some point that will happen. Will it happen in the next one? I don't know.
I hope it doesn't.
I hope not.
It happens.
I hope it doesn't happen. But I feel like knowing that they need to grow
Yeah.
they're gonna do that.
I feel like the mother is gonna be the ghost face in the next one.
Right, and she survived.
No.
That's true. That's true because the mother
Sam
is still
and Tara's
alive.
mom.
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, that would surprise me. So we're calling it right now, people. Scream 7. When that inevitably comes out, one of the two killers are.
I'm just ready for Jenna Ortega to pull off a mask at one point.
Who knows if they're trying to mimic that movie, the third movie, like they were trying to with the climax of this movie with the second one, for Scream 2, because this movie does rip off Scream 2's twist.
Yeah,
I have a feeling they might just do one lone killer in the next movie, like 3.
You know what?
I would be really disappointed.
Or counterpoints that as well. They're gonna have a whole army of Scream killers, but they literally marshal up all of the fucking
10?
plots that turned out Melissa. No, I'm talking like literally a whole army where like literally you just have an entire army, like Endgame style, an entire army of Ghostface survivors versus an entire army of Ghostface.
No, 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 no.
There are no limits to this franchise.
Running around with knives.
There are no limits to this franchise at this point. I'm not putting anything past them as far as just the lows that they will stoop to.
Every single Ghostface killer comes back from the dead as zombies. And
exactly. Listen, hey, I would watch the shit out of that. I would watch the shit out of that.
That's where I leave.
That's what I'm talking about. It's why I keep coming back to the Fast and Furious movies. If you're gonna go full stupid, go full stupid. Don't half-ass it, you know?
Yeah, but the thing I like about these movies, even though it's a heightened reality, like I still think it's like that this franchise resonates with me because shit like this could happen. You know what I mean? Like not specifically everything that will happen, but like you never know who could be a killer and for what dumb, petty reasons. And like how people like I like that they become more like vague in the other movies where you can't figure out this certain killers, like the fifth one. When you finally find out the twist in the fifth one, you find out their motive behind it. It's deranged, but it's believable. You believe it.
Absolutely believable.
I just didn't believe the fucking revenge shit in this movie because it's played out and like retarded. Just how like all of the planning that went into the killings. It's like the killings were brutal and satisfying, but really illogical.
Right. Right, and that's what it comes down to. Is that again? It's ultimately the story versus shock value. It's like when the story doesn't satisfy and the shock value is all it has. It takes a lot out of it. Which again, I would argue this movie has the best kills the whole movie. Like every time somebody got killed in these movies, I was like, oh, like it got like a visual, like visceral reaction out of me.
Especially Jack Champion and when Jenna Ortega with the eye.
Yeah, that was like
no,
in the fucking mouth, like in the mouth, the eye. I was like, oh, like that is insane. Like what?
That was cool.
Yeah. Also, the fact that this is like, well, actually, no, I can't even say that because I'm like, again, they always have to have the killer magically spring back to life. That's the other thing too. Is it's like
how did he make it out alive after being stabbed in the mouth?
Forget plot armor. What kind of invulnerable skin do all these people that all these kills that get stabbed have? Because I swear to God, every single time one of them gets stabbed, like they get stabbed in like the chest, like they always get stabbed in vital areas, but they always have to pop up for that one last like gunshot to the head surprise ending, which is another part of the formula.
Well, they did the TV in this one.
Well, they did the TV in this one, but I'm talking about, well, so they had that at the very least. But, like, you know what I'm saying, where it's like, that's another part of it's like, I'm like, yep, okay, they're going to pop up to life and get shot in the head or last minute, inevitably, you know?
Well, you're just also supposed to think, like, of certain explanations for unexplained things. Like, how was Melissa Barrera's ID, like, at the crime scene in the beginning?
Like,
are we just supposed to assume that Quinn like gave it to her dad to put it there?
Right. Like,
you know what I mean?
I mean that's how you would assume there. Also, like if we're gonna go like really deep, like if this movie's trying to like make like more subtle commentary on like all cops being evil and something like that, and I'm glad they didn't harp too much on that because there's definitely there's definitely an alternate universe where they would have really harped heavy on that. I think that would have just destroyed this movie.
Yeah, that would have hurt it.
Yeah. So with that being said, we'll give our final thoughts on star ratings. And Kristen, I'm gonna let you talk for a little bit about You Season 4 Part 2, and then I will what's it called? And then we'll talk about the we'll give our little pre-Oscars discussion before the Oscars tonight. So real quick, so Dustin, starting with you, what are your final thoughts and star rating for Scream 6?
I thought this was a very bloody good time. I wasn't as satisfied narratively on a narrative level as I was in the fifth one, or a performance level in terms of the killers. However, I did want to mention that Melissa Barrera was much better in this film, I thought.
I agree.
And I thought she handled the dialogue better. She got the motivation. I just believed her a lot more in this. Jenna Ortega's a natural. She's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with her at all. But Melissa Barrera really carried this movie for the most part. And I was really surprised by that performance. Mason Gooding is very likable and charming. He's basically Danny McBride in Pineapple Express at this point. You know what I mean? But Jasmine Savoy Brown, I still prefer Jamie Kennedy because she doesn't have because she doesn't have the spontaneity or the natural ability to just spew off that kind of, like, it feels very scripted and like very actory how she's doing it. She's nailing it. She is doing a good job, but I like the more improvisational nature of Jamie Kennedy's performance, especially in the second one where he just starts talking like in a British accent in the beginning. I just love little things like that in his performance. Yeah. And he was starting to really get great in that second one, and then they killed him right off. You know what I mean? And that's probably part of the problem I have with this movie. I didn't like that they didn't kill any of the main characters. Yeah.
Because there was a scene where it seemed like they were going to kill Mason Gooding, and it would have been like really awesome, and then he survives again, and it's like, okay, so they're just scared to kill off any of the main characters now.
I think in the next one they're definitely going to do that with one of them.
And I just
they have to.
That's what I mean. Like, they have to kill somebody off because the whole New Rules scene was reminiscent of the third one, only in that, like, do you remember Jamie Kennedy says, that means you said you could die. Anybody can die. It's a free-for-all or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, no one died.
And then none of the main characters die in that movie.
No one. And so I've seen some people say that Devin Dakota steals the movie on Twitter. I was like, she's not even in the movie. She's like barely has any. She's like such an iconic character. Just say you want to fuck her, okay? Just like, whatever. I just I think she's good. I think everyone in the cast is good except Dermot Mulroney and the two killers. I like Leanna Liberato. Jack Champion should be working at Subway. I don't know. I'm sorry. Like, Spider, go away, Spider.
Go back to Avatar, Spider.
Mimi Siku looking motherfucker. But I don't know. This is a 3.5 out of 5. I did enjoy it. The kills are more brutal. These Radio Silence guys know how to direct good action. A good horror suspense scene, and I enjoyed it. They have to have better end credit songs though, because I'm sick of the emo screamo rock.
You're not a Demi Lovato fan?
I'm a Demi Lovato fan, but not of her music.
I'm not crazy about that one with the Still Alive song. Yeah. Shout out to Brian Fallon. He plays a really cute song in the film.
Yeah, all right.
I'm going to talk about that, so go follow me there.
Denzel Curry has a needle drop in this too. One of my favorite songs of last year, Walking, in the beginning at the party scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Kristen, your final thoughts and star ratings for Scream 6.
Okay. I don't think it's as good as the fifth one. You know, I think we all can agree that the fifth one is a little bit more enjoyable. However, this new one, loads of fun. Enjoy the performances from Melissa Barrera, Mason Gooding, Jenna Ortega, Jasmine Savoy. I really enjoyed it. Even aside from, you know, the killers, I had fun, and it's a good time. Not the best one, definitely, to say the least. I will say this. I prefer the original Scream sequel over this one, I think, even though I love the set design as well in this film. So am I giving a score now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay, got it. And then as for me, yeah, this was, again, it was indeed a fun time. Like, I think this was the Scream movie that I had the most fun with, but this was, unfortunately, again, just from a story standpoint, it was one of the weaker ones. The twist at the end really ruins it. And as awesome as the kills were, once the twist comes out, it kind of destroys all the inherent fun that it had with the kills. So unfortunately, this is a 3 out of 5 movie for me. And as for where I rank this in the franchise, I like this one a little bit more than 3 and 4, but it's not better than 1, 2, and 5. So this one's like right in the smack dab in the middle for me. So yeah, only 3 out of 5 for me. Now, Kristen, so you and I talked about a month ago about the first half of You season 4. I have not gotten a chance to watch it yet. I'm still halfway through season 3. So just give us like 2 minutes on You season 4 part 2, whether this like actually solves any of your problems that you had with the first part, and whether you think this is queuing us up for like a good season 5 finisher, because I believe they said they are going to renew this for a 5th season, and Penn Badgley has said that this will be the final one if it happens.
Great. I love that, because they have to at this point, because the way that they did the 4th one, it lacks. I know I didn't say the most positive things about it. And I will say for the second part, it's much better in terms of the episodes and how the story goes. And the part that I wasn't crazy about is that Ryan's Montrose, who's like Joe's like friend in the series and stuff. It turns out that Joe has like this other Rhymes character in his head. Yes, Rhymes was a real person, but it's just hanging out in his head. So
he's just like a figure. So he's literally Joe's dark passenger personified.
Yeah, it's pretty much like the way I see it. I don't know if this is the best example, but like, you know how in Fight Club, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are together, and it's Edward Norton. So
it's literally so Joe's literally got dissociative personality disorder at this point. Is what you're saying.
And I mean, I don't know why they decided to go that route, and they basically how the series concludes. It's how
it's done.
Yeah, at least for the fourth season.
Well, the fourth season, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because like they kind of, I know they kind of bring it full circle. He's back in New York by the end, so I'm like, okay, so at the very least there's that. And they also don't bring love back in the way that I thought they were going to, which I'm like, thank God they didn't do that.
I like the scene where they brought back, the two lovers that he previously killed. I liked the episode that Penn Badgley directed. That was probably the best episode.
Okay.
He directed. Cool.
Yeah, he directed episode 9, so I thought that was really good. And then the way that they end with Joe's character, he ends up with this girl, Kate, who is his love interest in the new one.
Okay.
And he's just rich in the end, and now he can get away with stuff. And yeah.
So typical Netflix thing.
It's just a circle. They're just
typical Netflix thing of the protagonist can do all the crazy shit in the world, and he's always gonna invent some crazy concoction that he'll be able to get out of it. So yeah. So basically, what you're saying is the show should have capped after 3, and 4 they're just kind of dragging its shit out and spinning its wheels at this point. Is what you're saying?
Yeah. At this point,
that's disappointing.
Best episodes definitely the second half, but not nearly as I was.
Yeah, it's disappointing because, like I said, we were talking about You last month, and You, like I said, it was an interesting premise. I think in a strange way, it was kind of solving a lot of the problems that Dexter's later seasons had. But at least at the point where I was at, I'm a big fan of the first 2 seasons. Season 3 is kind of like, whatever. But from what I've heard, season 3 ends on a really satisfying note. But from everything Don Trim was telling me about the show, he was saying is like, yeah, they should have capped it at 3. And from everything you're saying, you're just backing that point up. But they're gonna do a 5th season, and like. What they're gonna do, I have no idea. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like they're basically just saying it's like, okay, he's just like accepted the fact that he's crazy now and that he's just like gonna be like murdering people just casually now, like
yeah, pretty much, and just anything that could expose him.
And
like Greg Kinnear is, I'm gonna give that shout out to Greg Kinnear. He's only like in I think it's like 2 episodes from what I remember watching, and I was like, and he plays Kate's father in the show.
Okay,
he's great, and he's the one who with all the money and. He actually is the person. I know we talked about Lucas Gage in the last series part.
Last season, yeah.
And he plays this like pansexual character, and Lucas Gage gets killed off, and it turns out that Greg Kinnear hired like a person to kill like that character, which is like, and so his father's just as crazy and rich, and then
Wait, Greg Kinnear's on this show?
Yeah, in like 2 episodes, who plays Kate's dad.
Yeah, this is a crazy show, Dustin. I will say the first 3 seasons are worth watching. It is a crazy show.
Can I say something? I only saw the first 2 seasons.
First 2 seasons, and I would say 1 through 3 are excellent.
I wasn't a big fan of that show, but I do think Penn Badgley's a very talented actor.
Yeah,
I think he's very good on that show. Yeah,
Penn Badgley single-handedly carries this show, and where I'm at, the first 2 seasons I'm a big fan of. I think the Victoria Pedretti character is great in season 2. I don't like the directions where they take her in season 3 at all, And as good as Penn Badgley is, I knew that this show kind of was going to have like a natural lifespan that it should have concluded with. And just where I'm at with season 3, the stupid fucking wilderness episode is where it lost me. Where I'm like, where they're like, oh, we're out here in the wilderness to reclaim our masculinity, and I'm like, okay, like we're doing this shit, like really, we're doing this, okay, like we don't need this. This is, I'm like, okay, Netflix, you got to stop with this nonsense. So overall. So Chris, your final thoughts that you would say as far as like whether you can safely recommend You season 4 or whether they should have called it quits after 3.
They should have called it quits after 3. I mean, I'm interested to see what like little things like Mary Ann, who's in the 3rd season, continues to stay alive. If you think she's going to be still alive in season 4,
okay,
same stuff. She was trapped in the box.
Yeah, of course, they always get trapped in Joe's little box that he always does. So,
and to be fair, I think if Jenna Ortega had the ability to come back for season 4, I think the person that she would have been played if it wasn't played by this other actress Jenna Ortega would have done a really great job in this series.
But unfortunately, Jenna Ortega hopped over to the movie franchise, and Scream isn't really successful. And also, you know, she's got the Wednesday show, which she's the star of too, which I know a lot of people are a fan of. So
and Jenna's trashing it.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, no, I'm very. I think
her.
I think the big takeaway is that I'm a very big fan of Jenna Ortega, and it's also really unsettling because one of my classmates looks exactly like her. So that's all. So I'm always making a ton of jokes about her and sending her like, I'm like, wow, you were really good in the Scream movies, you know, all that stuff. So I'm always like, I love you, Hannah. Just saying, if you're watching the show. So now let's wrap this conversation up. Like I said, the 95th Academy Awards are airing tonight at like 8 p.m. I believe is when they're airing. Hopefully this will not have any controversies this year. Although if that happens, I think we all know this is going to be a pretty boring show.
Jimmy Kimmel is going to get slapped by Matt Damon.
You think so?
Oh my God, yes.
You know what?
Yes.
It's gonna happen. You know what? You're 100% right.
And it's gonna be the hackiest shit in the world.
It's gonna be super hacky. It's gonna be super cringe. It's gonna be super forced because every time these stupid Oscars try to
I guarantee you, Jay, if that does happen, Jada Pinkett Smith is gonna post something on Twitter. And then it's gonna go all down.
It's gonna all roll down again.
Yeah, she's gonna play the victim again because that's what she does. And look, the Chris Rock special nailed everything that they need to talk about. That is the greatest stand-up special that I've seen. And I'm sorry, Dustin, I like that one better than all the Chappelle specials that we've gotten recently on Netflix. I was a huge fan of that one.
I don't think it's Chris Rock's very best special, but
it's not his best. But it was
no,
awesome.
but it addresses what his current state of life. It does a good job doing that.
And not even the Will Smith stuff. Like the rest of the special is very good. It's
just an excellent, very, very well done special. His whole statement on victims, on the Kardashians, on woke corporations, the story with his daughter, the Meghan Markle, everything that he does, he just nails every single bit of it. The Meghan Markle shit had me almost damn near pissing myself. That's how good that was.
His daughter getting in trouble.
That was insane. Like that was a different level. Funny. That was like, wow. Talk about
I didn't want to get a lawyer.
I didn't know the most gangster shit that he pulled. That whole thing was and they still don't know about this to this day. They're gonna find out by watching this special. I thought that was amazing. But but bringing it back to what's gonna win, I think we're all convinced Everything Ever All at Once is winning Best Picture. I think pretty much everyone is convinced that that's gonna happen at this point. It's won pretty much every preliminary award. I mean, is there a chance for a possible Top Gun or Fabelman steal here or no? It's got it locked up.
I think it pretty much has it locked up. I think the surprise could be Fabelman's. I just want to acknowledge that the people that are saying All Quiet on the Western Front, that's not happening.
I don't think that's happening.
Shout out to Mac, who also said that in our Oscar special.
Yeah, you know why it's not happening? 2 syllables. Netflix.
Yep, you're right. Yeah, the Oscars will never.
Well, they're going to get it to the other categories.
Yeah.
They'll give it to the other categories, Best International.
Yep. It'll get Best International. It'll get cinematography. But we all know, the Oscars will never, ever let a Netflix movie win Best Picture. They hate Netflix. They despise everything that they represent. They hate what they've done to the industry, in addition to them and Marvel. Although, again, it's the same thing with Black Panther. They let Black Panther be nominated, but there was no universe in which Black Panther was ever winning Best Picture, even though it came very, very close. So as for, I feel like pretty much all the other categories are locked up. I think it's safe to, Kristen, I know you're still convinced that Frasier is winning Best Actor, but Dustin, you and I are still convinced that it's going to be Austin Butler.
I think it's Butler. I was on before a couple of weeks, before BAFTA, I was thinking it was going to be Colin Farrell, but as soon as Austin Butler won BAFTA, I was like, yeah, he has it.
It's funny because there are still Bill Simmons is still convinced that Colin Farrell could win this, which I'm like, it could, but I'm like, they could do the it's time thing because the whole thing, the argument behind those three is Colin Farrell is the it's time argument. Frasier, it's literally the wrestler syndrome where it's this legacy actor who has never won before, who's given this incredibly gut wrenching and emotionally raw performance and all of that, all of that, and so. You have all of that going on, and but then with Butler again, it's the music biopic thing, it's the Rami Malek thing all over again. So that's why that worked. Taron Egerton tried that with Elton John, and that didn't work. But
and he's better than Rami Malek was.
Right? Oh yeah. The difference being that he actually gives a good performance, unlike Malek in that movie. So
he's good, and he didn't deserve to win though. No, anyway, Butler I think is going to win. Frasier or Farrell could upset. Actress. I think it's going to be Kate Blanchett.
So you're still going with Blanchett over Michelle Yeoh?
I do, because it just reminds me of the Anthony Hopkins thing.
Really?
It also,
It
also throws me back to the when whatchamacallit, Meryl Streep won her third Oscar for the Iron Lady.
Exactly.
Oh,
that's like
over Viola Davis.
Right. Okay.
That's the most prime
okay.
example to me that stands out in my mind, because I was like, how could you pick the Iron Lady over Viola Davis, who's absolutely brilliant in The Help?
Rooney
and
Mara
then you just get
and Rooney Mara that too. But the difference being here that Kate Blanchett actually gives a really great performance as opposed to Meryl Streep, who was just again in a costume and doing.
And she won the BAFTA.
Accent.
She won
That's
the
true.
BAFTA
That's
also.
true. She did win the BAFTA as well.
And it's already an iconic performance. It's probably the most talked about singular performance of 2022.
Yeah.
And despite, Everything Everywhere All at Once is great, strides and everything, and it's probably going to win Best Picture, like you're saying, Dominic. I don't care that Kate Blanchett already won 2 Oscars. She fucking deserves it.
Right. No, I'm not saying that she doesn't. That's the thing.
It.
I don't want this to be confused that I think that Michelle Yeoh deserves the win over. As great as Michelle Yeoh is, Blanchett is probably, again, for me, I think it's between her, Ray Fiennes, and Brendan Fraser as my single favorite performance of 2022, just in general. She is a monster in that movie. It might be, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think it might be the best performance she's ever given in any.
Either this or Blue Jasmine. This or Blue Jasmine.
Which again was another thing that she already won for. Supporting actor, we don't even need to have that discussion because it's Ke Huy Quan. He's had that locked up since minute one. He's been winning. He's won everything since the BAFTA.
All right. What do you think?
Supporting actress. So here's where it gets tricky because there's still a couple of small subset of people who think that Angela Bassett is winning.
I thought that was you.
Well, that's the thing. I
said that,
but then Jamie Lee Curtis won the SAG, and I'm like, okay, so that could happen. But Dustin, is there any sort of a microcosm where Carrie Condon, where again between Angela Bassett and Jamie Lee Curtis split the votes, and Carrie Condon comes in and steals it? Is there any universe in which that happens?
And don't forget, Stephanie Hsu is going to split votes with them too.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is that
Angela
because we've got another double nomination, so Stephanie Hsu can split it as well.
So those 3, and then Hong Chow, poor Hong Chow, who I'd probably give it.
Who would probably be?
I think of all the people in that category, she's got the best performance. As much as I love Angela Bassett and Wakanda Forever, I don't know. My only thing is, it's the Jamie Lee Curtis in a strange way. It's the same as the Colin Farrell, where again, it's the legacy performance. Where again, she's this legacy actress who's been around forever, and it's her first nomination. She's never been nominated before.
To be fair, I just want to get your opinions too, because I've talked about this on my podcast and with a couple other people that include my friends.
Shameless plug.
Sorry, I wanted to include that, but I think Stephanie Hsu gives a better performance than Jamie Lee Curtis.
I agree with that.
Yeah, sure.
Right. I'm not necessarily a fan of either of them. I think those two are both the weaklings of the movie, but I do agree. I like Hsu in that movie more than Jamie Lee Curtis.
Because I feel like she does more in that film than Jamie Lee Curtis, and I feel like Jamie Lee Curtis, great, love her, but
Jamie Lee Curtis is a fun comedic insert that's used for a lot of visual gags, but Hsu actually has a really good arc.
And her character is complex, and it really elevates the story and it keeps the story moving forward, and that's what I like to acknowledge about that. But Jamie Lee Curtis, she
was a cartoon in that. It was she was in a Terry Gilliam movie.
I mean, she's good in it, but if we're gonna nominate her, I don't think so.
That being her first nomination is embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Especially with the career she's had.
I will say this. My younger self would have said, "Oh, she should have been nominated for Freaky Friday." That's what my younger self.
I would have given it
27-year-old
Friday over this. I would have given it her Freaky Friday over this.
I would have given it to her now. I would as a 27-year-old, I still think she deserved the nomination for Freaky Friday, especially over this.
Yeah. She was nominated for a Golden Globe for Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should have been nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. Like I said, the screenplay categories, pretty much, I feel like in a strange way, this is the first year where all the technical categories are pretty much locked up. The only thing is it's so for production design, does Babylon win production design, or you think they give that to Elvis too?
I think I hope they give it to Babylon, but
it should be Babylon.
Yeah, it should be Babylon, but we already know Babylon's locked up its winning score. They got to give that movie something. The fact that it got snubbed from all the other bigger categories is ridiculous.
Some people are saying, Dominic, that All Quiet on the Western Front could sneak in, score, and win.
I would be really upset.
Why?
I heard the score was very good.
I think Babylon might be Justin Hurwitz's best score, which is insane to say, but you don't think so?
No, that's like third, because Whiplash and La La Land.
I don't know.
God,
I love Whiplash. I love that Whiplash score, but man, that Babylon score, just like how my whole thing with Babylon is that my problems with the movie aside, the fact that Chazelle keeps that consistent undertone and never misses a beat for 3+ hours. That is a difficult thing to pull off. Say what you will about
that Voodoo
it.
Mama is wonders.
Say what you will about it being too.
The score is his best, I think.
Right. Well, say what you will about it being too aesthetically similar to Wolf of Wall Street and Boogie Nights. Again, pulling off that level of consistency for 3 straight hours is difficult. Like, that is damn near impossible, especially in the age of the internet where you have no intermission, no breaks or anything at all. You have to keep that consistency throughout.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Hurwitz score is a part of that consistency as well, because again, Hurwitz has been Chazelle's muse like since they were in college together, you know, it's absolutely magnificent. And like, my problems with Babylon aside, the fact that it only got the technical nominations is ridiculous. The fact that
they only got 3 was just astonishing to me.
Right.
I'm still, I just want to also shout out to the cinematography category. Top Gun totally snubbed.
I mean, I'm gonna go with Batman. Why the fuck was Batman not nominated for cinematography? That was one of the best looking movies of last year.
That one too.
You know,
Tar got nominated. I thought that had great cinematography.
Great cinematography.
Oh,
for sure.
Nope got snubbed as well.
Yeah,
Nothing for that. Like,
that was great
Jordan Peele had fucking Christopher Nolan cinematographer for that movie,
right?
And that got nothing. I'll say for me, the biggest surprise is what's it called? For me personally, I know this is like cloying a little bit, but like the fact that Wakanda Forever was nominated for visuals over Multiverse of Madness, that was the biggest surprise for me.
Insane.
That was very surprising for me, especially once you go to the behind the scenes. Like, Multiverse of Madness was already the most visually pleasing Marvel movie of the year, but like the fact that like you go into the behind the scenes, like the fact that like none of the Illuminati were on screen at the same time for that scene where Wanda kills them all, and like that one was the most surprising to me. But yeah, that one's been Avatar from the minute that like the first trailer for that came out. Like I said, everything, everywhere, and women talking are taking the writing category. The only category that I'm a little bit confused by, there are still a few people theorizing that Spielberg could come in and steal the best director from the Daniels.
So.
Anybody, any credence to that theory, or no? You think this is the Daniels?
I think it's Stevens because it's the legacy of Spielberg, and knowing that this is like his life story he brought to the screen. I think that's the reason, and the Academy loves Steven. So
They do indeed, especially because Spielberg has had a history of still winning the director category even when his movie has lost out. You know, obviously going back to the infamous Saving Private Ryan debacle. Dustin, what are your thoughts on that? You think it's Spielberg or you think it's the Daniels for director?
It's probably going to go the Daniels, but like if anybody else, Spielberg.
Yeah. All right, so like I said, we will see if any of our predictions pan out tonight at the Oscars, which will
What about screenplays?
Everything, everyone, women talking are winning.
No, Banshees. Banshees.
You think Banshees is taking screenplay? Okay.
I think it's Tar.
You think it's Tar? Interesting. That's a hot take. That's a hot take right there.
Why? It's won other awards, but like in throughout the award season, besides Banshees and everything, everywhere, all at once. Like it's a well-written script. They like that movie. They nominated it for a bunch of shit. I don't know. Maybe that could win.
Look, all I know is that if Triangle of Sadness wins anything, I will be very, very, very upset.
I'll be angry.
That ain't winning.
The fact that movie has gotten as much critical acclaim and love as it has is absolutely embarrassing. But because that movie, honestly, for me, in hindsight, similar to Top Gun, was a movie I didn't like. But because of the amount of people that loved it, I was like, yeah, this is one of the worst movies of last year, just because of how many people love it. Like, I fucking the vomit scene. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, they have no idea. They have no idea what they're trying to tell.
Maverick was really bad for a second.
I know. I don't like Top Gun. I've made this clear on this podcast. I'm not a fan of Top Gun at all. And the fact that movie is as overhyped and got as much love as it is really, really, really irritates me, because the first one is not good, and the fact that people are hailing this as a critical acclaim when the only thing it's got going for it is technicals. I've still never bought into Tom Cruise as being a good actor, but like the fact that people are saying that like, oh, this is one of the greatest things ever, the fact that it saved movies, it's like, guess what? Batman made money in theaters. Just because Top Gun played for like 8 months straight, Batman still played for a while in theaters, and people still watched it in theaters, and it made money in theaters. So yeah, it's just.
All right, I'm gonna go to my Top Gun corner then.
The less said about that movie, the better. Look, all I know is it's only winning 1 Oscar tonight, hopefully, and I'll be really, really, I'll be really happy when it does. Sound, yeah, it's the only one that it deserves to win. So. Yeah. So with that being said, those are our predictions for the 95th Academy Awards tonight. Those are our thoughts on Scream 6 and You Season 4 Part 2. Be sure to tune into the Oscars tonight. Be sure to follow both of my co-hosts here with everything they've got going on. Kristen, follow her at Miss Filmingo. Dustin, follow him at Dustin Rhymes across all Instagram and all platforms. Follow myself at Movie Nerd Reviews and at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Twitch. This episode will be available tomorrow to listen to on Spotify. And as always, people, 12 seasons of a short film and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.